Hello there, ladies and gentlemen. So those of you that have followed me on my main channel and have joined me over here know that I have been trying to break into video essays for a good number of years. My original plan for my first essay was to create a video dissecting Scooby-Doo and its many villains to figure out how many of them succeeded in their goals. That video is still coming, but as you might expect, watching, reviewing, and breaking down 50 plus years worth of television is a pretty expansive topic, with the script for that video starting as an essay and ballooning into a decently sized novel. And it made me realize that I needed to start smaller topics for shorter video essays while I worked on the massive ones on the back burner. As for the story of how this particular video essay came to be, I recently offered Porgs, who runs the Power and Mythra propaganda account on Twitter, a video essay dissecting a character from a series of their choice in exchange for friendship. So, I watched Shakugan No Shana, a supernatural drama about a teenager who gets murdered by a demon on his way home from school, and winds up befriending a young girl with flaming hair tasked with maintaining the balance between the demon world and the human world. Being perfectly honest, I absolutely love the series and it's now one of my personal favorites. Not only does this anime genuinely keep you on the edge of your seat with every twist and turn, but it's a fun mix of fantasy and slice of life, as you can spend one episode exploring the world building or explaining parts of the magic system, and in the next one of the characters plan an all-day visit to an amusement park because one of their friends has never been, with ulterior motives of confessing to a girl he likes, and it falls apart because of his poor research and weak stomach. However, what really stood out to me with this series was its protagonist, Yuji Sakai, and the journey he takes to both understand the world he's found himself a part of and what he wants to protect, and the lengths he'll go to ensure what happens to him doesn't happen to anyone else. So that's what we'll be doing today, peeling back the layers of Yuji's character, how his actions and behavior influence those around him, and the path he takes to ensure the safety of those he cares about. So, without further ado, let's dive in and find out what makes Yuji Sakai such a great protagonist. To start, it's important that we go over the inciting incident that propels us into the story, Yuji's death. In the world of Shakugan No Shana, there exists a world known as the Crimson Realm, described as impossible for humans to reach, and from which Crimson Denizens and Crimson Lords originate. In order to manifest themselves in the human world, they need a steady supply of power of existence, which, unfortunately, primarily comes from feasting on humans. Yuji winds up being a victim of one of these feedings after stopping by the music store on the way home, and, in the process, becomes a torch, a being identical to the original human that slowly burns through their remaining power of existence until they eventually fade from existence, with any memories or objects associated with the person disappearing with them. Additionally, Yuji is a Mystis, meaning he also has a treasure tool at the core of his being, which Crimson Denizens try to collect in order to grant themselves additional powers, with the titular Shana becoming Yuji's full-time babysitter at the start as a consequence of that. In essence, Yuji is a cross between a shambling corpse and a limited edition cereal box with a silly toy inside. Yuji takes this revelation in stride at first, spending the first arc regularly contemplating the nature of his own existence, as well as the fact that nobody will mourn him when he's gone since he'll have forgotten he exists, while at the same time not letting it affect him too deeply. And that's ultimately where Yuji starts to shine as a protagonist, as despite his obviously bleak fate, he remains compassionate and optimistic, which winds up leaving an impression on the cold, nihilistic Shana, as every torch she's ever met before this line was pretty much the exact opposite. As a perfect example of Yuji's compassion, he's actually the one to name Shana after she insists that she's only a flame haze while affirming his own identity in the process. Yuji also maintains that optimism in the face of impossible odds, as he also tries to rehabilitate classmate and fellow torch Yukari Hirai, something that Shana tells him is impossible, by arranging for Hirai to go on a date with Ike, who Yuji knows she likes, as a form of exposure therapy. Sadly, Shana winds up being right and Hirai disappears anyway, which leads directly to our next point about Yuji. He's compassionate to a fault. Shortly after Hirai disappears, Shana uses what's left of Hirai's power of existence to assume her identity so that she can keep a better eye on Yuji, effectively replacing Hirai in the process. Yuji understandably goes ballistic here, letting her know in no uncertain terms how messed up he thinks that is, as she essentially took over an entire person's identity. And while he's not wrong to point that out, it's to the point where Keisuke Sato has to intervene and tell him that whatever's got Yuji riled up probably doesn't warrant such a vitriolic reaction. Additionally, he'll occasionally overextend himself, as at one point he gets voluntold to help Kazumi Yoshida with after-school cleanup and has to break after-school training plans with Shana, who is understandably upset with him rescheduling on her last minute and claims that he could have simply refused. He is also kind of oblivious at times, as a love triangle eventually forms between himself, Shana, and Yoshida, with Yoshida making him delicious bento box lunches every day for lunch, while Shana regularly tries to teach him the finer details of how to properly enjoy melon bread, and starts offering them to him as lunch as well. It couldn't be any more obvious that Shana and Yoshida like him, while the rest of his friends figure that out well before Yuji does, and even Ike has to spell it out for him. Speaking of Yuji's training, it's the perfect segue into another thing I really like about Yuji. His growth as a protagonist feels earned. As I explained in the segment on Yuji's death, Yuji is a Mistis, but that doesn't necessarily give him any useful powers that he can use to fight Crimson Denizens with. The main thing it allows him to do is move within the seals that Denizens and Flame Haze put up whenever they fight, and he eventually develops a second sense for who's a Denizen and who's a human as a result. Also, it's slowly revealed throughout this first arc of the series that Yuji's treasure tool is the Midnight Lost Child, a legendary treasure tool that restores power of existence of the Mises it's bound to once per day, and it's only really through sheer luck that Yuji happens to have it. But since it's so powerful, it often puts him in danger, be it with the Ball Mask, other Flame Haze who want to protect it no matter the cost, the Midnight Lost Child's original creators, and pretty much anyone else who wants to take a swing at him. Since he can't punch evil with any of the abilities I've described, he has to learn to do so through his own efforts, which is actually really satisfying to watch. As I briefly mentioned earlier, he starts sword training with Shana, and it eventually pays off for him, becoming a pretty competent swordsman by the end of Season 2. Also in Season 2, he starts learning how to get a feel for his power of existence so that he can channel it, eventually learning how to cast the seal on his own, and learns how to cast unrestricted spells from Narjuri Da, becoming a pretty decent shot with the energy blast technique she shows him. He also picks up the occasional treasure tool from battling Crimson Denizens to bolster his own offense and defense, further enabling him to become a well-rounded fighter. This also combines well with the other half of his personality, as while not an effective fighter right away, he's very subtly shrewd and able to remain level-headed in a fight, which allows him to focus on thinking aggressively and combat his enemies with equal aggressiveness, being described by both Flame Haze and Denizens as a brutal genius. He's a protagonist that you want to see succeed, grow, and fight to protect his loved ones. However, this is where Yuji's character starts to take a turn for the worse, with his kind nature starting to erode halfway through Season 2 as all of his adventures start to take a toll on him. Particularly after an encounter with Hecate at the Clear Autumn's festivals results in him losing a friend, who, as it turns out, happens to be a pawn in Balmask's ongoing schemes. He becomes a lot more cold toward people that he's usually friendly with, as he snaps at Yoshida when she tries to help Yuji take care of his mother and constantly gives him gifts, something Shana chews him out for after the fact. Part of that coldness comes from his regret in dragging Yoshida into the affairs of the Crimson World, and something he strongly wishes he can undo. He also becomes far more ruthless in battle, as he mercilessly murders the Jaeger Zerovi by strangling one of his duplicates with his bare hands and setting the rest on fire. Made more cruel by the fact that Jaegers are relatively weak, and Zerovi's defeat was complete overkill. Yuji also tries to accelerate his training after Balmask puts a transmitter on the Midnight Lost Child, constantly trying to push himself into training he isn't ready for, and even decides to leave Misake City altogether because he thinks that's the best way to keep everyone safe. Obviously, since his friends and family all live there, nobody thinks Yuji's serious about actually leaving, and Marjorie even tells him that he should look for his resolve in his heart instead of his head. Yuji is reluctant to accept this until the Crimson Lord Sabrak attacks the city, and following a hard-fought battle against the assassin, Yuji finally accepts that his home would be in danger even if he did leave, and finally finds his resolve to defend those he loves. Which all comes to a head on Christmas Eve. Major spoilers for the series going forward, so I recommend watching the anime for yourself before continuing. So, I've mentioned the Ball Mask a couple of times, but haven't really discussed their plan that they've been cooking in the background. So let's address it now, since it'll be important to dissecting Yuji's character going forward. For starters, they don't have a formal leader. Their true leader, the Snake of the Festival, wants to create a paradise called Xanadu for all of his followers to live in, but since making a world isn't an exact science, his first attempt at creating Xanadu resulted in him nearly building a new reality on top of the old one, resulting in his banishment. In an attempt to give him a vessel to act through, Ballmask works to create the Statue of Pride, the first instance of a Crimson Denizen being born in the human world. Using Misake City's clock tower as a body, Marjorie Dawes' longtime nemesis, the Silver infused with Fumina Kowane's memories as the brain, and the Midnight Lost Child as its heart, all while pumping it full of the power existence they used Yuji to make at the end of Season 1 in order to bring it to life. And since the Midnight Lost Child serves as the creature's heart, it starts slowly draining Yuji like a battery to boot. Yuji and Shana are ultimately able to destroy the Statue of Pride by returning the Midnight Lost Child to Yuji and destabilizing the Silver. But since Yuji was connected to the Statue of Pride while it was up and running, the Snake of the Festival takes an interest in him instead. Yuji then mysteriously disappears Christmas morning, belongings and memories have included, only to resurface sometime later under a contract with the snake and now helping the bad guys. This sudden turn to the dark side is admittedly pretty jarring, especially since he pledged to protect Misaki City not too long before this. But as the final season goes on and we learn more about Yuji's motivation for forming a contract, we discover that, in his own way, he's keeping his word, as he was revealed to be trying to stop the conflict between the Crimson Denizens and the Flame Haze completely, acknowledging that he's powerless to stop the conflict on his own and deciding to help Ba Mask create their paradise because he believes its creation will benefit everyone, resulting in him being more of an anti-hero than a full villain. Of course, there are several fatal flaws that Yuji and the Snake's plan, as we find out that when a Crimson Denizen consumes a human, their power of existence doesn't exactly go away, but coalesces into a massive cosmic storm at the rift between worlds where Xanadu is planned to be created. Since Yuji and the Snake are using Earth as a blueprint for the New World, that also means there's going to be more humans for the Crimson Denizens of Ba Mask to potentially consume if they don't change their ways. And it could potentially push both Xanadu and Earth toward a supernatural disaster. Additionally, Yuji doesn't tell Shana what he's planning because he doesn't think she'd accept it, even though his plan is ultimately for her sake, and instead decides to keep her safe by force at first. It's extremely fascinating to see how Yuji's mind works in the season, as a lot of what I discuss about his personally is brought to its logical extreme here, being eerily calm at almost all times, turning his brutally genius mind on his former friends, treating Yoshida as a means to an end, and generally being on the same wavelength as the Snake because their goals often align for different reasons. All while also maintaining his oblivious nature to how Shana feels, as not only does he unintentionally traumatize her by defeating and capturing her, but, again, he refuses to divulge his plan to her because he doesn't think she'd still love him if she knew why he was doing it. It also makes for a really solid character dynamic between them, with Yuji trying to create what he believes to be a better world for everyone, and Shana fighting to save Yuji from himself. Everything finally comes to a head during the war between the Ba Mask and the Flame Haze, with the Flame Haze fighting to alter Xanadu's creation so that Crimson Denizens are unable to consume humans in the New World, a decision that's ultimately upheld because the Crimson Denizens want to live alongside humans, rather than eating them. While Yuji does earn compliments and the forgiveness of the Snake for helping Ba Mask achieve their dreams of paradise, Yuji doesn't leave for Xanadu right away, as he finally decides to tell Shana the truth. He reveals during their final confrontation that he deliberately created Xanadu without Misaki City because he was fully aware of the damage he'd caused, believing that he needs to atone for his sins by teaching the Crimson Denizens and humans to coexist on Xanadu without the comfort of his friends or hometown. A final self-sacrifice that shows that he's willing to do whatever it takes to make peace with himself and earn the forgiveness of those he's hurt along the way. He also uses unrestricted spell Grammatica to issue a final proclamation to his friends and loved ones, revealing that after everything he's gone through, he's still afraid of being forgotten. But as it turns out, he doesn't have to do so alone, as Sean decides to stand by him and help him walk the path he's chosen for himself, proving that he truly was underestimating the power of love. And as Lami's the spiral organ left him a spell to make him a stable existence once he figured that out, he's able to walk that path as long as he needs to. And that's my dissection of Yuji Sakai. Definitely not the most linear dissection of a protagonist and their character, but overall I enjoyed following Yuji's journey, as it's ultimately a story of a hero coping with their own death and doing their best to leave a lasting legacy and protect what he believes in, even if it's a path that he believes nobody he loves will follow him on. And even whether or not you agree about how he went about his goals, there's no denying that he got results and was successful in his mission to end the conflicts between Crimson Denizen and Flame Haze, and was able to secure a legacy for himself in the process. If you haven't seen Shakugan No Shana yet, I highly recommend it. I mainly focused on Yuji today, but there's a lot of fascinating characters in this story, and the series will definitely have you on the edge of your seat with a lot of the time. And finally, be sure to give follow Pyro and Mythra Propaganda on Twitter, as I wouldn't have made this video without Porgs putting on my radar, and they're both out there spreading the good word of Xenoblade Chronicles best girls, and a generally cool person on top of that. But anyway, that's about it for me. Hopefully you guys enjoyed my dissection of Yuji Sakai. I'll be trying out smaller topics for future video essays and trying to release them semi-regularly, so be sure to subscribe so you don't miss them. We also play games and review various things on my other channel, so if that also interests you, consider checking that out as well. Be sure to check out my Patreon to support what I do, check out the end screen for other videos I've made, and join the Discord to hang out. We also have a Minecraft server over there as well. And of course, you can find me on Twitter, as that's where this video topic originated from. In any case, thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time, I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace!